Earlier this year, I spent 2 months in the Philippines. It was my first time there. I wanted to go have a look around, scout out some, business and investment locations, various locations to base yourself as an expat, things like that. So I went around to a number of different islands. I had a good look around. I stayed in places long enough to get a bit of a feel for it. If I liked it, I stayed a bit more. If I didn't like it, I moved on. So what I wanted to cover in this video is what is the Philippines like for a digital nomad or someone who is working or running a business, any kind of remote worker who is basing themselves out in Asia. Is Philippines a good location for that? My name's Aaron, I'm from offshore in Asia. We help people move, invest, do business, lower taxes, all these kinds of things out in Asia. Head over to offshoreinAsia.com if you're interested to learn more. The first thing I would say here is when you're coming to the Philippines, don't expect it to be like Thailand. I've spent most of my time in Thailand. I've spent a lot of time all throughout Asia, but most of my time I am predominantly based in Thailand. So I was coming to the Philippines for the first time, and you will notice straight away that the Philippines is a lot less developed than Thailand or even somewhere like Malaysia. There is a lot more poverty. There is a lot more of a divide between the rich and the poor. And you'll see this every day when you're walking around. The infrastructure isn't quite the same. It'll be a little bit harder to organize things, maybe a little bit harder to get around. You might be relying on jeepneys and trikes. In some areas, you can order a Move It, which is the Grab equivalent of a motorbike taxi. That gives you a bit of certainty in what you're going to be paying and knowing that you're paying a fair price, that sort of thing. But in a lot of areas, you will be using informal public transport, your trikes, your jeepneys, and so on. One thing I did notice is that you do feel a little bit more isolated in the Philippines. You're kind of stuck all the way up there in the ocean. You don't have any land borders with other countries. They kind of do things their own way out there, and you just kind of feel that you're kind of out there doing your own little thing, little bit separated from the rest of Asia. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it is maybe a little bit harder to get out of the country, especially if you want to move out of the country quick, if there's a typhoon or something like that coming. It's not as easy as sort of jumping up to Laos or jumping down to Malaysia like you can so easily if you are in Thailand. The other thing you will notice is the Philippines has a very different feel to the rest of Southeast Asia. Sure, you're still in Asia, but for one, the level of English is very high, similar to like what you get in Malaysia. When you're out in the regions, you will come across people who don't speak that good at English, but generally the English is very high here. It is also a big Catholic country. Religion is very important here. Most people still go to church on Sundays, and it has a big influence on the way people live their lives. And of course, with all the Spanish history, a lot of the street names and town names are still in Spanish, and it just gives the whole place an overall different feel than what you would expect going to other countries in Southeast Asia. It's actually pretty cool. It's nice and refreshing. It's something a bit different. I also found that it is generally easier to form bonds with the local people here. I think a lot of that has to do with the high levels of English. The locals are, particularly out in the regions, a little bit more interested to talk to you, to wonder what you're doing here, why you're in their country, having a look around. In a friendly way, of course, just because they're not as used to seeing foreigners, or at least not as many foreigners as somewhere like Thailand, where they get sort of 40 million people coming a year. There is a certain level of, you feel like respect coming towards you. There is a level of courtesy. They're very polite towards foreigners. They want to make you feel happy, comfortable, and welcome in their country. And that is actually very nice. So getting a bit more onto the work side of things, like what is it like to work from the Philippines? Well, there is a backpacker scene, there is a digital nomad scene, but there's nothing like what you would get in Thailand or Bali. They do have co-working spaces, but again, not like you would sort of experience in like Bangkok or Chiang Mai or in Canggu. They're going to be a lot smaller operations. The sort of quality might not be quite as good as what you would expect in some of these other places, but it's still going to be more than enough for you to get on with your work. Now, as far as locations, that is a difficult one for the Philippines because it is made up of so many islands, and you can go and find things on any of these islands. The main places people will start, of course, is Manila. Cebu is very popular as well. Palawan, Siargao is one that comes up, especially on YouTube and things like that. It's supposed to be like the Bali of the Philippines. I didn't go there myself, but if you enjoy the digital nomad scene in Bali and you're looking for something a bit different, maybe something a bit less developed or what Bali used to be like back in the day, then Siargao might be worth a look for you. One island that I did quite like is Sikihor. That is very quiet. It's certainly got that tropical, laid-back beach lifestyle, low levels of infrastructure. Internet there is okay. It was quite a nice place to be. I ended up having to cut my trip short there because we had some internet dramas, but I'll get more onto that in a tick. After that, I went and spent some time in Bohol. The main tourist area of Bohol is in the south. It's sort of like a mini island coming off the main island, and that is called Panglao. That is a very touristy area. I spent a lot of time in the main capital city of Bohol. That is called Tagbilaran, and it's about half an hour north of Panglao. It is quite an old city. It's quite compact, it's very livable. I actually really liked it. You can walk around, there's eateries everywhere. You can live there very cheaply. It's easy to sort of buy things from the supermarkets to sort of like when you're spending a bit more time there and you want to live more like a local. It was a little bit like Chiang Mai in the sense that it has everything you need, most things you need, but it was small enough to just be very chilled out. In other ways, it was very different to Chiang Mai. So I wouldn't necessarily compare the two in other respects, but as a place to base yourself, for a nice kind of traditional, authentic view of small city life in the Philippines, it was a very good example of that. It's also quite safe. There is a lot less pickpocketing and other crime compared to places like Cebu and Manila. Also, I mean, there still is poverty, but it's not as in your face as in places like Cebu and Manila. So Tagbilaran is definitely a place that I will be going back to. Now, what kind of people, remote workers, digital nomads and so forth, would I recommend the Philippines to? I would say it is a good place to visit if you want to get a little bit away from the crowds, if you want to get off the beaten track a little bit and experience something a little bit different, something a bit more old school backpacker vibes, kind of like what Asia used to be maybe 20 or 30 years ago. You can find a lot of that in the Philippines. You can live very cheaply here, but you will notice as well, as soon as you move into the tourist areas, the prices go up significantly. It is by no means cheap to live in the touristy areas. That's fine for me because I don't really like hanging around the tourist areas anyway, that's just me. But if you like to spend time in these more sort of holiday resort kind of areas, you're gonna pay a lot more. So yes, it can be a good place in general to bootstrap your business, to keep your costs low while you build your business up, or even just to base yourself if you're a remote worker working a job for an employer located overseas. It can work for that, but you may find that you need to move at least a little bit out of the main tourist areas. That said, once you get out of just 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers down the road, it's not like you're isolated. You'll still be in a high amenity area, but it'll be much more local living. There'll be a lot more eateries around, a lot more street food, and it'll be so much cheaper, unbelievably cheaper. The accommodation will be a lot cheaper, the food will be a lot cheaper. These are the kind of places where you might want to set yourself up if you're going to live longer term, and of course if you want a more authentic living experience in the Philippines. Now, the internet is very important. The Philippines is known for not having great internet, and it is unreliable, just being honest. Most of the time it was pretty good. I could get what I had to do done most of the time. But there were a couple of occasions, like I mentioned before, when I was in Sikihor, and we lost all internet, all Wi-Fi, all phone coverage. It was gone for 3 days, nothing on the island. I was thinking to myself, okay, it's going to be out for 1 day, that's fine. I might just go, look at some waterfalls or something for that day, come back and do some office work the next day. Second day, third day, still not fixed. No one knew when it was going to be fixed. In the end, I had to get off the island, get a boat up to Bohol because I had work I had to do, and apparently the internet was working in Bohol. So that's what I did. You're going to want to definitely get phone data just as a backup, but like I said, that didn't save me in this case. So the Philippines will be good for people who want a bit more of a lifestyle location, the typical quintessential tropical paradise. You can get all of that here. You've got easy access to nature, beauty, all of that stuff, hiking, whatever you want to do, it can be done here. You come here to work at a slower pace. Maybe you're, brainstorming some stuff, doing some project planning, doing things that don't rely on having fast internet all the time. If you're able to have internet most of the time, but where internet is not critical to your operation, then this can work well for you. If you're doing more serious work, or even if you are a remote worker who has an employer overseas, so you're working full-time hours, then you're going to have to be a little bit more careful because you will need internet all the time, otherwise it could affect your job. In that case, you might want to spend more time in the more established areas like Manila and Cebu City, and maybe take sort of weekend trips down to the more isolated islands. But if you spend extended periods of time on the more isolated islands, you probably will come into internet issues here and there. So that is certainly something you will have to weigh up depending on how integral to your business or your job having strong, reliable internet is. One other thing I'll mention here about the Philippines is that it is very good for outsourcing. It is very good for finding people, hiring in general, people who are very affordable to hire. The average hourly rate in the Philippines will be significantly lower than what you'll be paying in the US. You can find university educated people in the Philippines who speak very high English, know their way around a computer as good as you do, and will be very good workers for your business at a fraction of the cost. If you are interested in hiring and outsourcing in the Philippines, but you don't want to go through all the trial and error yourself, we can certainly help you do that. That's it for the video, guys. Please share your experiences of working in the Philippines yourself. What locations work well for you? Where did you have issues? Do you recommend it to other people? So anyway, we'll leave it there. Share your thoughts below. We'll catch you later.